Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to be implementing this feature where you can search an area on a map and find the associated properties in that area. And this is what it will look like on our version of the app. So without further ado, let's get started in building this out. I went ahead and added some new properties here so that we could test this out on different areas besides Miami. The properties included are Denver, Chicago, and New York. I suggest just copying this array over. That way you don't have to worry about the different latitudes and longitudes. So in addition to all of these objects that I created, I also created a new function. And here I specify this function is for testing purposes. We aren't going to be using this in prod, but the same logic will be used on the back end whenever we implement that functionality to allow users to create their own properties and then start displaying those properties whenever a user searches for a certain area. So let's create that function here. We're going to export it, and I'm going to call it get properties in area. It's going to take in a bounding box, which is a numbers array, and specifically it needs to have 4 indexes, and it will return a property array. First, we're going to create a new variable called minlat and assign it to the value at index 0 in the bounding box. Then we'll create a new variable called maxlat and assign it to index 1 of the bounding box. Min longitude will be bounding box index of 2, and max longitude will be bounding box index of 3. Then we'll create a new variable called properties in area and just assign it to an empty array. Then we're going to loop through our properties array here, and we're going to create an if statement stating if the properties dot latitude is less than the max lat and the latitude is greater than or equal to the min latitude, and the longitude of the current property is less than or equal to the max longitude, and the longitude of the current property is greater than or equal to the min longitude, then we will push that current property into the properties array, and here at the bottom we'll just return those properties. Now, as you can see here, one of the main issues on our map is that we are displaying all the properties in our properties array, and we don't really want to do that. We only want to display the properties for the area in which the user has searched. So let's implement that functionality right now. And to do that, we need to create 2 new state variables. So the first one is going to be called properties, and it's going to be a type of properties array. The next is going to be called location, which is going to be either string or undefined. And then here in our use effect, we say if root.params exists, then we need to capture the bounding box being passed in to our parameters here. So let's create a new variable and call it num bounding box and cast all of the values in that bounding box to a number. And underneath of that, we'll say set location to root.params.location. And here where we're importing properties, we can import get properties in area instead. And underneath the set location, we'll call get properties in area, and that will get all of the properties within this bounding box. And then we need to set the properties to the returned properties. So now let's test it out, searching for Miami, and see if it works out. And here you go. We're getting 4 locations returned within that bounding box of Miami. The only problem I'm seeing is that here in the top left, we have 12 properties available. Yet when you scroll down the list, we only have 4 properties. So let's change that to display the correct amount of properties. And to do that, let's create a new prop for our animated list header called available properties, and we'll be passing in properties.length if properties exist. Otherwise, we'll pass it in undefined. So let's create that prop within animated list header. So here at the bottom we'll say available properties, which can be of the type of number or undefined. And let's pass it in here. Now where we'd pass this in is this header logistics component. So let's do the same thing that we just did. Let's copy over available properties. Pass that in. Let's change this to available properties. And then let's copy what we have here. Navigate to header logistics component and then paste it here. And paste that there. And then we will conditionally render the text value here. Instead of saying 12 available, we'll say if available properties is not equal to undefined, then we'll display the available properties followed by spaces available. Otherwise, we will say search spaces. So now let's test it out for Miami again and make sure it's working. Florida. Okay, 4 spaces available. There we see 4. Now let's try New York. And 5 available, with 5 available here. Okay, so that's working. But let me reload this. Alright, so as you guys can see here, whenever we don't have any properties, we don't just want to display a blank screen, which is what we're doing right now. So let's change that and add a Lottie view to display here, telling the user to search in a certain area. Alright, so here we need to wrap this in some brackets, and then let's roll this animated flat list into those brackets, and we'll say properties.length is greater than 0 ? Otherwise we'll do something else. Alright, now this animated flat list, we need to place it after the question mark, and so in other words, we're going to be displaying it only if we have properties to display. So if no properties are available, let's just display a text here and say search for something. And of course that's going to be hidden by our header, so let's give it a style equal to margin top of 400 just to make sure it's working. Okay, so that's getting the desired effect. So let's actually display a Lottie component here. So head to lottiefiles.com, and underneath this Discover tab there are free animations. So here I search for map, and these are the options that I got. I personally like this Lottie, so I'm going to click on it. But the colors don't really align with my app, well, the apartments.com colors, so let's go to edit layer colors. And luckily we have our theme file, which is full of different shades of colors of green, so I'm just going to change out these colors of red here with colors of green. So let's head to theme.ts. And for the lighter colors like this, I'll do something like color-primary of 100. And that'll give us a pretty light green color. Update that. Now for this mid shade, let's do something like 300 here. Let's update that. Okay, and already that's looking a lot better. But for these, let's do something like maybe 600 here. And then let's do this one the same color. Alright, and that's looking pretty good now. So let's hit this download button here. Now let's head to our assets folder and create a new folder here called Lotties. And now let's move that into our Lotties folder. And I'm going to rename it search screen because that's where we're going to be displaying it. Okay. Now we need to download a new package. So here I am on the Lottie documentation expo. We just need to install this package called Lottie React Native. So let's head back to our project in the terminal. I'm going to say expo install Lottie-React-Native. Alright, so with that installed, let's go back to our search screen and import Lottie View here. From Lottie-React-Native. And let me spell that correctly. Now here where we're displaying this text where we're saying search for something, let's clear that and then display a view. And for this we're going to need to create some new styles, so let's do that here. And let's import style sheet. Now for Lottie container, it's going to have a background color of white, a flex of 1, justify content of center, and align items to center. And within this view, let's display our Lottie view. We'll set autoplay to true, loop to true. Style is going to be equal to a new style called Lottie, and the source is going to be a relative path to that Lottie that we just created. And our Lottie style is just going to be a height of 200 and a width of 200 as well. And as you can see now, we have our Lottie displaying on the screen. Now I think it would look good with some text underneath of it, so let's add some of that text. Underneath of this, let's add some text. The category is going to be equal to H6, and we'll just say begin your search. And underneath of that, let's just add another piece of text. The appearance is going to be equal to hint, and I'll say find apartments anytime and anywhere. And I'm thinking that looks pretty good. So that looks pretty good. Let's go and test it out with Miami. And we're choosing Miami because we know that there are properties going to be returned. And there you see 4 being returned. Now let's try someplace where we aren't getting properties returned. So Kansas City. And okay, so we don't want to say that because they just search for Kansas City and nothing is displaying. So they don't need to begin their search. They need to be shown that there aren't actually any properties in that specific region. So let's do that here. So we can mitigate this issue by first wrapping this component in a fragment. And then we'll say root.params question mark else. And if there are parameters, then we would like to display something else here. And the stuff that we just created, we'll put it in the else statement. So just for brevity's sake, we'll copy this stuff up and paste it here, but let's get rid of this Lottie view. And instead of begin your search here, we'll say no properties found. And find apartments anytime and anywhere, we'll just say please search in a different location. So let's go to our map here and add in that ability to search for properties via a button. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do is head to our file, which is called map.tsx. And in this file, we need to change a lot of things. The first one being that we need to change the provider to this map view to Google. Then we need to create a new state, and we're going to call it show search area button, and then we are going to set it to a default of false. And then back in our map view here, we need to take advantage of a prop called onRegionChange, and it's going to have the parameters of region and isGesture. And we can check here with an if statement, if isGesture.isGesture, then that means that the user has moved on the map, and whenever the user moves on the map, we need to set show search area button to true. So here we'll say if show search area button is false, then we need to say set show area search button to true. Now beneath our active index logic here, we need to display our button. So let's create some brackets here and say show search area button and active index is equal to -1, and then we'll display a button here, and that's going to be imported from UI-kitten/components. We'll set the appearance to ghost, and we'll just say search area for the text being displayed. And we're also going to give this some styles. So let's add in those styles here, styles.searchArea button, and then add in those styles down below. And those styles are going to be a position of absolute, bottom of 30, Z index of 100, a border radius of 30, align self to center, background color of white, border color of theme color -gray, and then a border width of 1. So as you can see here, we are able to test it out, and it is appearing whenever we move on the map, so that's good. But now we would like to add some functionality to this button so that it will actually search an area whenever we click on it. Because right now, if we click on it, nothing's happening. So in order to do that, we need to pass in 3 more props. Those are going to be location, set location, and set properties. Location is going to be a string. Set location is going to be a void function which takes in a string, and then set properties is going to be a void function which takes in a properties array. And I made a little note here that we're going to be getting rid of this later. We're only using this for testing purposes, and that's because we are going to be using React Query to handle this in the future. But for right now, this will work. Next, let's create a new state called bounding box, and it's going to be a number array, and it's going to be used for searching properties in a specific region. And underneath of our bounding box, we'll create another state called region, and it can either be a region or undefined. And region is coming from React Native Maps. And then outside of our component, we want to create a variable called map region, which will be region or undefined, and then initialize it to undefined. It's going to be used to persist the region if the search area button is clicked on the map or pressed on the map. Now within our state variable called region, let's change the initialization to say if map region exists, then we want it to be map region, otherwise it can be undefined. Now back here in onRegionChangeComplete, we need to create a new variable called bounding box, or new bounding box, which will be equal to the region.latitude minus the region.latitude delta divided by 2, and then plus region.latitude delta divided by 2, and then same thing for the longitudes. And the reason that we're having to do this is just every time the user decides to change the area on the map, then we need to set a new bounding box so that if they click on search area, then we can get the associated properties within that bounding box. So underneath of new bounding box, we'll say set region equal to region, and then set bounding box to new bounding box. And then here where it says initial region, let's just change that to our region here. And then down here in our button, let's add an onPress event. And in that, we are going to be setting properties to our get properties in area. And we're going to be passing in our bounding box state. Then we're going to set location to map area so that it displays that in the search bar. We're going to set map region equal to the current region. And then we will set show search area button to false. And we can actually abstract that code to a new function called handle search area button press. So let's cut this code. Here we'll say handle search area button press. Okay, so let's go back to our search screen and pass in these new parameters. Now here on map, location is going to be just the same as this. And actually we can just say, instead of root.params here, we can just say location. So let's just say location and location. And then we also need to pass in set location and set properties. So let's do that here. Set location, set properties. And now it's all good. So let's go back to our map and let's import useEffect. And let's create that useEffect function here, and it's going to be dependent upon our initial region. And we'll say if location is equal to map area, then we just want to return. Otherwise, if initial region is present, then we need to set show search area button to false, and then set region to the initial region. And we're doing this because if there is an initial region and the map area is not true, then that means that the user searched for a certain area, so we ought to take them to that certain area. And then here in handle marker press, let's get rid of this if statement, because now that we're using Google for each and every one, it's really not applicable anymore. And underneath of this, we'll also set another timeout, except that it will occur after 600 milliseconds. And within this, we need to create a new region. Latitude is going to be equal to properties of index.lat. Latitude delta will be equal to region.latitude delta if that's present. Otherwise, it's going to be equal to 0.4. And we can just copy this stuff and paste it below for longitude. So let's copy this stuff, longitude, and we need to change lat here to long, region.longitude delta. Okay, and underneath of this, we just need to set the region equal to new region. So with that done, let's give it a try and see what we got. So let's go to Chicago, because that's where we've got some properties. And there you go. Let's see if, okay. And we're getting some smooth transitions still, so that's good. And if we click off, it's still working. Let's go to New York now. And let's see. Now let's search for a new area, say Miami. And we get taken right to Miami, so that's good. Let's go to Kansas City. Okay, there's nothing there. Let's just make sure that it works like this. Miami. Okay, 4 spaces available. Okay, we don't have the search button by default up. The user has to move it. They search the area, okay. If they go back here, they do some searching, they come back. Okay, still on Miami. Let's search for Denver now. And we're taken right to Denver. And let's search for Miami again. And 4 spaces. And we're back in Miami. Alright guys, so that is pretty much it. The GitHub link will be in the description. If you have any suggestions, please put them in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.